Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Fly Like an Eagles podcast, episode number 2. We're here with you every single Wednesday at 2:30, 3 o'clock, whatever time we're both ready. You know, we have different schedules, obviously, but whatever happens, happens. And we have a lot to talk about, especially in week 2 with Kenny Pickett coming to the Birds, Hassan, Reddick, all that mumbo jumbo. And I'm ready to go. How you doing, Scotty?
I'm doing well, Kyle. Actually, just enjoyed my birthday this past weekend. Had a great time. Took me a couple of days to recover, but glad to be back here on with you every Wednesday for about an hour and a half to talk some Birds. And like we said last week, there's never a shortage of Eagles news and NFL news in general to tackle. So I'm excited to get started with you today.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, what I personally wanted to start off with today was the Kenny Pickett news, because right out of the gate, I wanted Kenny Pickett out of the draft. I think it was 3-4 years ago. We ended up drafting. Which draft was that? Can you remember? I'm drawing a blank, but I remember I wanted him. Was Zach Wilson in that draft?
I believe he was drafted in 21, but I'm gonna check real quick.
Right after COVID. All right, so I remember I wanted him. I remember seeing Howie Roseman up in the suite using his little binoculars, zoning in on him when he played for Pitt. And
I'm sorry, it was 22.
22, so they really gave him no time to flourish. So he was zoning in on him with his binoculars from the suite level at it used to be Heinz Field when Pittsburgh was playing. And I remember Howie saying that he never went to games to scout players, and he was really interested in Kenny Pickett. That's when I thought we were going to be sold on Kenny Pickett, because we knew that Jalen Hurts' situation was pretty much up in the air, especially with that disastrous playoff performance against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, where he could barely get it past half field for the majority of the game. Little do we know that Jalen Hurts thrived the next year. We ended up getting A.J. Brown, and it really helped him out kind of fundamentally develop his game. And from this point forward, we'll see what happens. But this is interesting to me, because the guy that I wanted in Kenny Pickett is now a backup on the Philadelphia Eagles. And the question I wanted to ask you, Scotty, is if Jalen Hurts starts off the season kind of suspect to where he's not performing up to his $251 million contract, do you think there's going to be some fans that will be willing to go Kenny Pickett's way just because Howie Roseman wanted him in the first place? Or do you think that won't happen until later on down the road, maybe week 10, week 11?
Especially in this city, they're always calling for the backup quarterback. They say it's the, second most popular person in town, whatever that saying is. Again, we should have a whole Jalen Hurts topic. Maybe we can add that towards the end of this show to really break down our full opinion. I know it sounds like, and I know that I'm still a lot higher on Jalen Hurts than you are. Of course, I mean, theoretically, if Hurts does not perform, let's say that they somehow go on a 3-game losing streak, which I think that's all it might take, especially in this city, they'll definitely be calling for Kenny Pickett. Do I see that happening? Do I want that to happen? No. I don't really think Kenny Pickett is a threat to the starting position for Jalen Hurts at this point, and it's kind of disrespectful again. Hurts, an MVP runner-up candidate, almost a Super Bowl MVP caliber player, had a great 2022 season, still a decent 2023 season. Kenny Pickett, I mean, I don't even know how many games he's won. Maybe he's won 6 games. I don't know what I can actually look up his overall record right now.
I'll get it for you.
So yeah, he's a great prospect. I think he has some decent talent. I don't think he's, the next Patrick Mahomes or, Trevor Lawrence or Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert in training. So I don't know. I think he's a developmental project at this point. He obviously, didn't have the best offense around him in Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh always puts out a defensive product, especially with Mike Tomlin. But, I mean, it's an upgrade over Marcus Mariota. Now, I think that they might have given up a little bit too much for him. I don't know if you saw that and what I put in the show notes but they gave up a 3rd-round pick and 2 7th-round picks to the Steelers.
Right.
And they got a Pickett and a 4th-round pick back. Now, that 3rd-round pick, that's a little bit too much. That's a little too rich for my liking. What do you say?
Well, what that tells me right there is that Howie's still sold on them. And you have to go back to that Wentz contract that we signed Wentz to. It was like 4 years, a ridiculous amount of money for a player that just came off an ACL injury. And that tells me right there that Kenny Pickett is being watched, because you don't just give up a 3rd-round pick. Now, granted, you got a 4th-round pick back. It's 1 round. I get it. But Howie Roseman loves this prospect. And I knew he loved Jalen Hurts because he picked him so high up in the draft. But at the end of the day, when you like 2 quarterbacks and one went on that abysmal record to end the season last year and 1-6 and finishing the way they did against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers again, the way he played down there, I think that's what sold Howie. And a lot of people are shocked that he'd rather go the Kenny Pickett way other than the Justin Fields way. Now, I'm not as shocked on that because they love their pocket passers more than they do go into that Michael Vick type of quarterback that they did back in the early 2010s. I feel like they want to go the pocket passer route again because that's what won them the Super Bowl. But it's to me, it's really up in the air because, something tells me that, yes, they love Jalen Hurts, but at the end of the day, he might have a shorter leash than we think. And
now, question for you.
What?
Why did Justin Fields Steelers only got traded for a 6th-round pick? Why did the Bears only get a 6th-round pick for Justin Fields?
Because I think he only won 9 games in his entire career in Chicago. And what that tells you is, now I play fantasy football. I don't know how many people play fantasy football out there, but the guy was kind of a stud because he ran for a ton of touchdowns. He accumulated a lot of points. But at the end of the day, he didn't win you any football games. Kenny Pickett, I just looked at his record. He's 14-11, which makes him a winning quarterback in the NFL. Now granted, he wasn't the most flashy quarterback. He didn't. His hands are small. Maybe they didn't trust him as much. They finished above 500 to 500 every single year that he was there. I just believe that they wanted to move on because, number one, they got Russell Wilson, a Super Bowl winning quarterback. You're going to move on, and you're going to give him a shot with all the weapons that they have in George Pickens, Deontay Johnson. They have fire moves.
What's your thoughts? What's your kind of off topic? What's your thoughts on Russell Wilson? I mean, he's a really interesting story. I thought he was a top 3 quarterback in Seattle. I loved him. They always beat the Eagles. We've never beaten him still to this day. It's been like 10 times in a row.
Right.
Still beating us. And then he goes to Denver. There's ego issues and locker room and, personality clashes with coaches and players and private offices. And, hear all of this noise.
Yeah.
And then last year, even with Sean Payton pretty much, talking about him in front of the media, saying this isn't the guy that I want. He's not doing this right. I don't know. What's your thoughts on that? And now he's on his 3rd team in 3 to 4 years. Who is Russell Wilson?
All right. So what I took out of all that Sean Payton thing is maybe it was set up between him and Russell Wilson. Now, granted, that's probably not what happened, but that's what I'm thinking in the back of my mind, to where Russell Wilson asked Sean Payton to say some dirty shit about him to get him traded out of Denver because it was never going to work there. It was never going to possibly ever work.
You have a good conspiracy for that.
Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, I have a ton of conspiracies. You know me personally. But at the end of the day, he was never going to thrive in Denver. He wanted a way out. They didn't play him the last game when he's owed an absurd amount of money. I think they played their backups backup that game. So that tells you everything you need to know about that situation right there. And he got shipped to a place that has more talent, in my opinion. And it's funny because Jerry Jeudy just got an absurd contract this past week when he didn't even deserve it. And the guy's been labeled one of the best route runners to come into the NFL in years. And I believe the contract was almost $100 million. Let me look at this real quick. But yeah, Russell Wilson's situation is much better than it was. Like, Denver was not the place for him at all.
Now, while you look that up, I will, so now Pittsburgh, and we're kind of going off topic, but I think this quarterback carousel kind of because Kenny Pickett was traded, then the Steelers traded for Justin Fields. The Eagles obviously had interest in Justin Fields as well. So going back to Pittsburgh, you have Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, which, and you could say a fantasy football or any type of fantasy situation, to be like, oh shit, like this is a great quarterback room. We got two athletic quarterbacks that can move around in the pocket, have that running ability with strong arms. In my opinion, should that, like, it's kind of weird. It's kind of like you with Hurts and Pickett. Like, I will put them on two different levels. Russell Wilson, how much he's accomplished versus Justin Fields, and I'll put Hurts right here with how much Kenny Pickett has accomplished. Like, I think there's a pretty big gap, but in my opinion, just due to age and recency bias and how people have performed, I think the gap between Russell Wilson and Fields is closer than Hurts and Pickett. What say you?
So Justin Fields, like I said before, I think he's a kind of a one-trick pony. He's not. I think he's better with running the football than throwing the football, and I think a majority of teams found that out kind of early in his playing career. Now, I said he's flashy, like I said, but I think as a true talent at quarterback, you'd rather have Kenny Pickett. And when you're comparing Jalen Hurts to Kenny Pickett, I think they're two completely different quarterbacks because, number one, Jalen Hurts has to use his legs to succeed. He absolutely has to. I'm not sold on his passing in the pocket. If he doesn't use his legs, I'm not sold on him primarily with his arm. I never have, never will be. Kenny Pickett's that kind of guy that, granted, he has small hands. He's a pocket passer, barely runs. And I just feel like it's apples and oranges at the end of the day, Russell Wilson to Justin Jefferson is like comparing, I don't know, Taylor Swift to who's a really mid singer. Taylor Swift to I don't know, Becky G. Like it's like apples and oranges, And I just looked up that contract for you. Jerry Jeudy, the Browns, agreed to a 3-year contract extension. And I was thinking 6 years at first in my head. It's 3 years, so I was on the right track with the number wise. $58 million, $41 million guaranteed.
And how many years?
3.
Okay.
That is ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean that's what free agency is. You get overpaid, right?
Yeah, I mean but the Browns always hand out these ridiculous contracts. They gave what's his name? Deshaun Watson $234 million guaranteed. It's ridiculous.
Wait, the Browns. Oh, because Jerry Jeudy was in Denver before, right?
Right.
Okay, gotcha. Just trying to figure out the correlation from the Steelers. Okay, I got you.
Yeah, I don't know how I came up with Taylor Swift and Becky G. I was just thinking of like great to like really not great. But
hey, I like that. I like Shower. What's wrong with Shower, right?
Yeah. It's her one song from 2014.
One hit wonder.
Yeah, one hit wonder.
But yeah, wrapping up that topic there. I like Kenny Pickett as a backup. That 3rd round pick is just a little too steep for me. And again, I'm still confused how Justin Fields only went for a 6th round pick that can become a 4th next year, but time will tell. Time will definitely tell. I'm happy that it's not Marcus Mariota.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I didn't see much of Marcus here in Midnight Green, but at the end of the day, the guy had bust written all over him since he got drafted. And I'm happy we're not with him anymore. And I'm actually kind of happy we have Kenny Pickett because if Jalen Hurts gets hurt, I always wanted Kenny Pickett. I think he'd thrive in this offense with all the talent we have. And I'm happy we have him as a backup. So
I'm also interested to see what Tanner McKee can still do, right?
Tanner McKee from Stanford, right?
Yeah, that name is just it's interesting, right?
I mean, he didn't look too bad in preseason.
Yeah, no, I'm genuinely interested to see what he can do for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Moving right along here. Last thing of note from free agency was they brought in a lot of new defensive players. Guess we can just run down these names. Not sure really anybody too much of note besides Devin White. I'm sorry if I don't even know how to pronounce these correctly. Burks and PJ Mustipher. Do you want to give that a better shot than me? How to pronounce that?
Okay. So PJ Mustipher.
PJ Mustipher. There you go.
Okay. Now you
Now
tried.
these are
That's all that matters.
now these are all three 1-year contracts. I think obviously the name that stands out here is Devin White from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Mm-hmm.
He did win a Super Bowl with the Bucks.
Yep.
Now, this kind of is a Howie Roseman track record to bring in these 1-year linebackers.
Yep.
They sound better than Zach Cunningham and Nicholas Morrow and whoever else was brought in last year. Shaquille, whatever the hell his name was from the Colts.
Mm.
What are your thoughts? Anything about these three stand out to you, or are they just plug and play stop gaps like we're used to?
So the last two are fillers. Let me get on to Devin White real quick. So one of the people I play fantasy football with, he's a diehard Tampa Bay Buccaneers fan. We were going back and forth all season, like trash talk. It was fun. It was great. When they played us in the playoffs, one thing stuck out to me. Now, me and him talked about the game going into it the whole week, so it made me feel less and less confident going into that game. He told me that they have no linebackers that could help win them that game. They'd have to win on pure offense alone. And I told him if they're going to win on pure offense alone, they're probably going to beat us because we can't stop anything right now. And that's exactly what happened. I think we scored, 9 points the entire game. Devin White is not as good as you think he is. And honestly, I think it's one of those moves to where they wasted $4 million and we're going to have no linebackers once again. So that's a little bit cause of concern. I think the offense is going to have to carry us the whole season because Devin White, from what he told me and what I've seen on film last year, has absolutely sucked for them. And he actually got benched, down the road. So it's a little bit worrisome. I'm not going to lie, but maybe he performs here because I have seen players come from different situations and play better. But we'll see. Every single year, it seems like he's been in a steep decline. But it'll be the story of our lives because we don't value linebacker at all, and the ones that we pay usually aren't that good anymore. So,
yeah, I'm actually seeing that contract's worked up to $7.5 million. So that's definitely is a kind of pricey. I think you said what, $4 million guaranteed, possibly
4 guaranteed and 7 incentivized.
Yeah. So he is still young. It looks like he started off his career strong. He won Defensive Rookie of the Month, yada, yada, yada. Obviously, that was all the way back in 2019. Doesn't mean much for today. But he is still only 26 years old. So I think I'd rather definitely have a younger player, like we kind of talked about last week, the over the 30 hump, where I feel like we do tend to go older on defense, especially with our cornerbacks, Bradbury and Slay now. We're going to talk about Hassan Reddick in a minute here. So, I'm glad that he has age. That's the one upside. But, how you built, and we're going to obviously talk about this in the coming weeks. I really think that building a defense is number one through the draft. Now, we have recently hit on defensive players in the past. Kazir White comes to mind from 2022. He was this great, solid linebacker that Howie got out of nowhere. Patrick Robinson on the Super Bowl team obviously had a great season. So we have seen Howie do these 1-year deals. James Bradbury in 2022. But they're not the norm. They're still rare for any team to find a 1-year gap where, honestly, those three, they played you could say almost all pros. Those players had all pro seasons when
those seasons, yes, absolutely.
So, that's the ceiling. And then, the bottom is just, I don't even know who's. Just pick anyone from last year's defense, how they performed.
Literally, yeah.
So, I have a little bit of faith for Devin White. And the other two, like we said, I do not know as much about. But like we said, these are pretty much just stopgap moves.
They're fillers. Yeah, they're fillers
for now.
if they really wanted to go get a linebacker and really solidify the position, they'd go in the draft. But they're never going to do that.
Now, I do know that Calais Campbell, speaking of defense, is still out there. Does he spark your interest? I know he's pretty old at this point, but still a productive player.
I mean, veteran-wise, how old is he? I'm going to look it up.
Calais Campbell? Might be like 36, 37. He has to be, right?
The only way I'd bring Calais Campbell in here right now, he's 37 years old. He's going to be 38 in September. He has a $60 million contract. That would be a big no for me.
That is a crazy amount of money at his age, though, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you're going to bring him in, it's to be a leader, and we have a ton of leaders. We have Brandon Graham. So, I mean, I'm not really looking for leaders anymore. I want people that can perform. And, no, I think we got to get younger at that aspect of the game.
Speaking of leaders, sorry, go ahead.
You're good. No, you're good.
Said speaking of leaders, that's a great transition into Hassan Reddick, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, there's been rumors swirling about him since I probably would say a couple of weeks after the Super Bowl. I mean, it's been a while now where we've heard he wants a contract extension and he wants more money per season. And then there has been a controversy with Josh Sweat, how they do not want to pay these two defensive ends relatively the same money, or who are they going to keep? And we found out last week that Josh Sweat agreed to restructure his current deal to stay with the Eagles. He'll now earn $10 million guaranteed, plus incentives for a max of $13 million.
Yeah.
Now, do you think that is a good number for Josh Sweat? And also, what's just your thoughts about this overall? Because I'm still in the Hassan Reddick camp. I'm not going to sway from my opinion. I'd rather keep Hassan Reddick because, again, he's guaranteed production at this point, and also, like we said, for the leadership qualities. And yes, Josh Sweat has had decent seasons, but I've never really I'm going to count on Josh Sweat to sack Dak Prescott on this third down. Like, I just never, like, he doesn't come to mind for me. So what are your thoughts on this entire thing?
So Josh Sweat, I wouldn't say he had a down year last year because he still had 6.5 sacks. He had 11 the year before, so that is a kind of a jump down from the year we went to the Super Bowl. But as for Hassan Reddick, I mean, you can't let this guy go. I mean, he had a jump down as well, but you have to think about this. The last 4 years, including Arizona, he had 12.5 sacks. Carolina, he had 11 sacks. Philly, he had 16 sacks when we had that stellar defense that year. And then last year, when we were kind of on a decline, he still had 11 sacks. So at the end of the day, the guy is 29. He's turning 30 this September, I believe, from what I was just looking at. Yeah, he's turning 30 this September.
That's probably what they're scared of. That's probably the number one thing, right?
Yeah, he's turning 30, but at the end of the day, I mean, he hasn't been declining. Maybe they're scared of the number a little bit because he wants what? $20 million a year. But here, one of our commenters just brought up a really good point that I was gonna say. Reddick was dropped into coverage a lot last year, and that's not his game. You know, he's an edge guy. If you kept him on the edge, I would boost those sack numbers from 11 to maybe 14 at the worst. So not only is he a leader on that defense, not only did he almost murder Brock Purdy in the championship game, but if you guys let this guy go out, just let him walk out the door, it would be one of the worst moves in Philadelphia Eagle history, especially when Josh Sweat, I know he's homegrown. I understand that. He went to the Pro Bowl in 2021. I'm not as sold on Josh Sweat, not even a little close to what I am on Hassan Reddick. Hassan Reddick, if he leaves, our defense is completely shifted. And I don't care if Vic Fangio doesn't like him. I just do not care. You cannot afford to let him go. Or else next year you're going to rely on the offense and offense only. And it could get pretty brutal. I'm not going to lie to you. And especially because I want this team to thrive so badly. Because Saquon Barkley is one of my favorite players to watch within the last 10 years. And if you do a disservice to him once again and make this defense even worse to where you have to rely on him on offense to overcome the defense, it's like, what the hell are you doing? You know, I wouldn't understand it at that point. So, no, you absolutely positively need to keep Hassan Reddick. He's earned it, and he's your best player on defense as of right now, by far.
No, I'm glad that we're on the same page with that for sure. I was actually just looking more at Hassan Reddick's stats. So he was drafted to the Cardinals in 2017, and he only started 3 games his rookie year, 12 games his sophomore year, and 5 games his third season. So yeah, I mean, let's say he even got 7 to 8 sacks. Like, he could be on a record-setting pace for 10 plus sacks every single season. Now, of course, there has to be some type of red flag with him. He only was in Carolina for 1 year after Arizona. Obviously, here, he's been a stand-up player, huge production. So I don't know what, the behind-the-scenes narrative is with him. But again, we only care about on-field production here. Yep. He's he's from the area. He loves being an Eagle. And it's just like, I guess the only thing they're thinking of is the homegrown versus Josh Sweat, and then the age gap, the age difference, because, I feel like Howie, he's probably feeling burned from the James Bradberry contract. And it's hard to ignore that on the same exact defense, or we have a player coming up, he wants a new contract, or it's time to extend him. I just did this with Bradberry, and now I'm kind of screwed, and I wish I never did this. So now I have to keep Bradberry. He's going to have to play at least 1 more year. And God forbid the same thing happens again. Now, there's no record of this with Hassan Reddick, but I feel like Howie, he is kind of like that. Like, he will not make the same mistake twice right away. He has that in the back of his mind. It takes him a while to get over those similar mistakes. Does that make sense?
See, but this is why I have a love-hate. This is why I have a love-hate relationship with Howie Roseman. Everything you made sense. Everything you said made sense. But the reason why I have a love-hate with Howie Roseman to this point is because if he goes back and looks at that Bradberry contract and he doesn't want to make the same mistake with a guy who really hasn't declined all that much, just because he was dropped in the coverage because our defensive coordinators were not up to task. If you go back and look at that Bradberry contract as a sample size of what may happen with Hassan Reddick, that's foolish. And the reason for that is, who cares if you mess up with Hassan Reddick? On paper, he's the same guy every single year. Everyone knows the game. Everyone knows in the city of Philadelphia that this guy is homegrown. He was born in Camden, went to Haddon Heights, went to Temple. He absolutely loves it here. He's performed his ass off. And just because of some defensive tactic bullshit last year from our slop of defensive coordinators, you're thinking of not paying the guy just because you think it's going to be a bad move because you fucked up with James Bradberry? I'm sorry. I don't agree with that. And that's why he's not the GM that everyone thinks he is. Because the way this guy is not locked up right now, at least for 3 years, at the very least, it doesn't make any sense to me. Like, it really doesn't. This guy's your best player on defense, bro, and you have to lock him up. If this guy, let's just say this guy comes from here to Dallas next year. Now, granted, we both know that Dak Prescott stinks, but if he goes to Dallas next year, their defense is going to be immaculate, and they're going to kick our ass.
Also,
yeah.
When's the last time an Eagles defensive end had back-to-back 10-plus sack seasons? Or like that you could even rely on it, right?
It's been a long time, man.
You had the bust with Derek Barnett. We saw him get drafted live in Philly. The list goes on of bust defensive ends. You know what I mean? Obviously, we love BG. Can you even think of another in the past 10 years, another good defensive end that really we can count on?
Funny thing is, BG, we love BG because he had that strip sacks. Let me ask you a question, Eagles trivia, without looking at anything. How many times in his Philadelphia Eagles career has he had over 10 sacks in the season?
I think it's once.
Once?
Right? Yeah, I think he had 11.
He had 11 and 22.
Yeah.
Yep. And we love BG. Hassan Reddick, every single year he gets over 10 sacks.
Yeah.
So it's like, if we love BG and we're willing to let Hassan Reddick go, what does that say about our character? Like, I mean, do we not value any players? I don't care.
Like
I really don't.
production.
I don't care if this guy's turning 30 years of age. I
That's
do
the way,
not.
that's the only thing it could be, right? I mean, I don't know what else even is another possibility besides the age. Like, I don't know, right?
Yeah, like this might be one of the best defensive players we've ever had, and we're willing to just let him go. Like it just pisses me off.
Like, I'm looking back. I mean, Chris Long, 2017, Vinny Curry. Like, I mean, I love Chris Long, but I can't remember another defensive end that had this production in the past 10 years. I can't. Trent Cole was the last one. Like, can you think of any, like, Connor Barwin? I really can't think of anyone else.
And they were nice players, but they weren't Hassan Reddick.
Trent Cole was, but
he was cool. Yeah, he was cool. But I would still value Hassan Reddick a little bit more. I don't know. I mean, like, I think we take it for granted what we did in 2022, and we think we could get back to that game easily. And that was the problem with me last year. You know, I looked at all of our flaws as nothing with that 10-1 start. I was like, yeah, we're just going to walk into the Super Bowl again because we have unfinished business. Not seeing that we had some gaping holes on that team. And I'm not looking over it again. You need to resign Hassan Reddick. You have to. If you don't, that's a fireable offense, in my opinion.
That's a little extreme, but it is nitro.
No, it's not. It's not.
I wouldn't say fireable offense, but I think it would just make no sense. It would be asinine.
If you are, bro, if you,
well, it's not going to happen. I mean, look, all the signs are pointing to he's not going to be here. I mean,
you give away a third-round pick for a guy who was labeled a bust in the city,
see what Owen say. Yeah, we got to go back to Reggie White.
White, that's a long time ago. But if you're willing to give away a third-round pick for a guy who's labeled to have the smallest quarterback hands of all time, and you're not going to bring back a guy that consistently gets you over 10 sacks, I'm sorry, that's a fireable offense.
I mean, I agree it's wrong, but he's not going to be fired. But
he's not. I agree with that.
Another kind of random thing that I think a lot of the defensive woes, which I really was kind of in denial about how good Javon Hargrave was.
Very good.
Yep. I thought, like, you have Jalen Carter now. I'm like, is he that much better than Fletcher Cox? Is he? And I think he really disrupted opposing offensive lines that really opened up, a Brandon Graham to get 11 sacks, to help Hassan Reddick get 16 sacks in 2022, for the Eagles to tie or to become the second most overall sack season in NFL history. So that's the thing. Hassan did all that without Hargrave last year by himself, basically. Yes, Jalen Carter had a good beginning rookie season, but that should show you how good Reddick is more when we lost that talent on defense and he still was very productive.
Exactly.
Imagine if he had a Hargrave in the middle type again, or if Carter gets better. I'm really, really concerned about Jordan Davis at this point. I think we starting to look at ourselves in the mirror and stop just grouping these Georgia players together. So we can talk about that at some point if you want to. But yeah, I think that we need to, like we said, value what we have right now. Hassan Reddick is a blue chip stud, and doesn't matter who's playing opposite of him, who's on the defense. Like we really don't have any other defensive players we can say that for right now. I love Slay, but even Slay without another, safety, a decent corner, Slay's not as good if he doesn't have good people around him.
So hear me out for a second. I think I found the beef with Hassan Reddick because I'm looking at Javon Hargrave's stats from last year. How many stats do you think he had in 16 games played? I mean, how many sacks?
Hargrave?
Yeah.
I'm going to say he had like 8 to 10 sacks.
Okay, so you were close. He had 7. The year before that, he had 11. So basically the beef with Hassan Reddick is so tremendous with his defense that he makes players that maybe aren't that good, makes them look better, and then gets them paid without him getting anything in return. So I can see maybe where that
So you think it's a lot of it has to do with Reddick then?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because Reddick is still getting 11 sacks last year when our defense was complete dog doo doo, And then the last fucking year,
nobody was getting sacks. No one at the last 7 games, right?
yeah. And Hassan Reddick had 16 sacks in 2022, and he still had over 10 in 2023. Javon Hargrave dropped 4 sacks on the San Francisco 49ers, who have labeled one of the best defenses of all time. So the fact that he got a contract and did 4 sacks should tell you maybe, just maybe, Hassan Reddick has a bit of a beef there. He might, because Javon Hargrave's got a monster contract from the 49ers.
Yeah, and just a reminder, as we all know, the Eagles had 70 sacks in 2022 and fell to 43 in 2023.
Are you willing to say that's a little bit of Jonathan Gannon as well?
For sure, even though everyone didn't like Jonathan Gannon here, I never had a huge issue with him until the Super Bowl because of he didn't adjust to those 2 exact same reads from Patrick Mahomes in the end zone. But yeah, I mean, again, like who else did we lose that many sacks? Again, Javon Hargrave comes to mind.
Yep.
We lost, TJ Edwards because White. What's up?
We lost CJ Gardner-Johnson. Oh, I did? So we lost CJ Gardner-Johnson.
I was just going to say as well, the covered sacks make sense too.
Yeah. But
yeah, like you said, the covered sacks make sense too, for sure.
Right. Absolutely. But I want to go back to this question. Will we see more of Nolan Smith this year? I mean, hopefully. The guy last year was kind of a stiff. I mean, we drafted him with our 31st pick last year. I mean, he's got to step up for sure. He's another Georgia Bulldog. And, to this point, what's up?
I said I was going to think about Nolan Smith, that I think they were just so scared on defense last year. They're like, we don't have any time to test anybody out or and eventually they played rookies when they had to later in the season. But I think that they just were like holding on for dear life. And we know that. Even in the beginning of the year, it was like bend but don't break. It worked for them for a couple games, but they're like, we just need like guaranteed anything that we can get. So we don't want to put Nolan Smith out there. I mean, it wasn't a way to run a defense. Clearly, we know that now. We knew that then. We were kind of just in denial a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's a fresh start for him. Second year. I hope he does extremely well, and I think he can. I have all the confidence in the world. He was a first-round pick for a reason, or he could have been a high second-round pick. Fresh start for him. I love to see what he can do. I have no negative feelings towards Nolan.
I'm also looking at the negativity as well. And you draft all these Bulldogs from that elite championship team in 2022, I believe, for the national championship game. You get Jordan Davis, you get Carter, you get Nolan Smith, you get Rigos, you get all this talent, and one of the players is good. Like, I mean, and even
we don't know that. We don't know that for sure yet.
But even that player hit a rookie wall. Like, he was one of the best tackles I've ever seen on the Philadelphia Eagles the first 9 games of the season, and then he just stopped getting to the quarterback. So I don't know, man. Like, is this town really cursed that much? Like, I don't understand it.
This is going to go right back. This is going to be a great lead up to one of our final topics, which is, these players, how much time do they get on their initial team to be good?
Yeah.
Because even like what you're saying now with Jalen Carter, yeah, he had a downward spiral at the end of his rookie year. But, who says that he can't turn it right back on and have 10 sacks this year? You know what I mean? Like, why? It's kind of like that microwave society that we've talked about before where people want it right now. But let's give these people some time. It was a terrible defensive coordinator last year. Terrible interim with Matt Patricia, Sean Desai. I like looking back. It's just I just those names, like they're just gonna you're gonna have some trauma and nightmares just from saying those two people's names. I mean, it's like why were they hired? It could have like anybody else, anyone, right?
Debo Samuel's still running.
That's
right in front of me, man.
That's where I still don't. I mean, I think if NFL players stop tackling, they're quitting, and no one wants to admit it. And no one in the media, you'll like, oh no, they don't quit. They don't quit. They have tackled since they were 5 years old. Like,
yeah,
if they stop tackling, there's a problem, and they're done. They're like, this shit's not working. Now, I do remember someone, I think it was Darius Slay, or was somebody in the locker room that said, basically, two chefs in the kitchen, both of them are telling us different things, so we're mentally confused, which I guess that can play a role in like your physical ability to tackle, like what gap, who am I covering, this play, that read. But at the end of the day, like, we know how, like, backyard football, like, tackling's tackling. The angle you make, like, I don't care if you're covering this one or this gap or this zone. You see someone running in front of you, you're going to attempt to tackle them. So
yeah, you ask for chicken parm, you get ramen noodles. That's
exactly right. There was no chicken salad out of chicken shit last year.
Exactly.
Right.
Yep.
No lemons were made into lemonade.
No, exactly.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to compare this like you are, but I was going to think of something, but I couldn't think of anything.
So I see a comment from Chop Lad. It can't get any worse on D, can it? No, I think it really can't get any worse. No. And it won't be. It won't be. Because you got CJ Gardner Johnson back. That's a huge upgrade. I think the jury's still out on Reed Blankenship. He's a great story. I think he's still meant to probably be a backup if we're being 100% honest with ourselves. Again, the Reddick and Sweat situation, no more Cox. You got Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, and of course, we still have the draft to add players. I think we'll probably get more into the draft our draft needs and wants next week.
Yeah.
But I think this defense can definitely bounce back and hopefully be a top 15 defense, and we would have taken that with open arms last year. I think we were like bottom 3. I don't even know what we finished.
No. At the end of the season, we were like the worst. I mean, if you put us against the Carolina Panthers in that playoff game, I think they would have beat us.
Yeah, but that's just very sad. It's very sad.
Yeah, that was fucking brutal. And this next comment I have, just hope the front office analytics keeps us away from the coach and within reason. I mean, here's the thing. It's not just football. It's with every single sport nowadays. Analytics.
Honestly, I think everything, every job, every single job is metrics and analytics, right?
Yeah, and it sometimes can ruin the feel of the game to where if you used feel instead of analytics, you would have won. But analytics told you something else and you lost. It brings me back to that one point. It was in 2021. It was Nick Sirianni's first year on the job. And I was in Dallas with my buddy. And he decides to punt the ball away because the spreadsheet told him to. And I'll never forget that. I'm like, instead of feel, you decided to look at a sheet and it told you to punt. It's like a siren went off. It's like, nope, you got to punt. And
now, what was the game situation? Because I know they lost bad that game. It was when he wore the beat Dallas shirt, right?
Yeah, it was fourth and 4, and we were down by like 10 points at the time, and we were I think we were on the 45-yard line of our side of the field, and he decided to go with that because the sheet told him to. And that's where I thought in the back of my mind, I was like, this guy's not the right guy for the job. And after last year,
I thought it was when he wore that beat Dallas shirt. He's not the right guy for the job.
Yeah. I think that a lot. I mean, next year he'll be back to his Super Bowl winning ways. Well, Super Bowl getting to ways. We'll see if he could actually win it, but I don't know, man.
Believe that, or what? You're just like you're just optimistic because we've talked about Sirianni. Like, it's such a mixed bag. It's like we just had a great free agency. We got Saquon Barkley. We got, you don't like Devontae Parker. I'm trying to think of who else that we did. I'm coming to a blank right now. We just had a great free agency. We ended the year.
We got Saquon Barkley, Devontae Parker, Who else did we get? I don't even remember.
Hey, Bryce Huff
Huff
and C.J. Gardner-Johnson.
Oh yeah. Okay, so we got C.J. Gardner-Johnson, a guy that should have never left the building in the first place. We got Huff from the Jets, who is a rotational piece. Could be good, could be not. Who knows? We got Devontae Parker, and we got one of my favorite players to watch recently in Saquon Barkley. So yeah, it was an A+ free agency, but at the end of the day, how will it transition onto the field?
That's what I'm saying. We're supposed to think that we can, again, we're going to return to being this powerhouse. All these free agents have come in here and said the Eagles are, one of the best teams. I just saw Devin White talking about it again. I think it was yesterday, where it's like, when you play the Eagles, you got to bring your A game. I'm so happy to be here. And we want to think of ourselves as that. But last year, like you said, we just could have lost to the Panthers in the last game. So it's like, where are we on the radar? Like, where do who are we? And it's a mystery. We want to think optimistic. I think we're not the worst team in the league. Do I think that we're on the Chiefs and 49ers level?
No.
To be determined. It's going to take a lot of work before we can really gauge ourselves where we are, right?
I mean, player-wise, we have top 3 talent, but team-wise, it's a big difference. You need to play together. And team-wise, I don't think we're as good as Detroit right now. So I don't know. I mean, it's a mystery. But like you said, we'll get into the draft. We'll see who we pick. On paper, we always want the same player. How he usually picks the player that we want, other than when they picked Jordan Davis, I wanted Kyle Hamilton, and we saw how that worked out. And I mean, other than that, it's always a mystery. You don't know what you're getting,
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what the problem is. You went from being up here at the gold standard to all the way down here to trash city. So,
it didn't make, and there was no explanation for it besides we had bad coordinators.
Yeah, the explanation was bringing back the coach who's goofy as hell. But I mean, at the end of the day, I guess,
beat Dallas, right? Beat Dallas.
Yeah, beat Dallas, and he wears the Bryce Harper shirt. He's like, "Yeah, go Phillies."
It's kind of cool. It's like, I get like how he would think that would appeal to Philly.
Yeah,
but it's like, it's still corny because we still want just a professional, badass coach. We don't need some clown, right?
No, at the end of the day, the Eagles. I like the other teams, but at the end of the day, the Eagles are Philly. And if you're gonna pander to the other teams, at least win while you're pandering. If you're pandering and you're losing, that's just gonna piss us off. And
you are right, because there is way more Eagles fans than all those other fan bases combined.
Yeah,
Would
absolutely.
you agree with that?
Absolutely.
So like most Eagles fans don't care about those other teams at this point. They don't.
No, I mean,
there's Eagles fans all over the country, all over the world.
I'm a Sixers season ticket holder, and the fans don't even care about the team because they think they're going to lose.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, this is why we have an Eagles show, because we both know the team, we both love the team, and we both want what's best for the team. And at the end of the day, we're going to call out bullshit. And right now, I'd have to say,
honestly, no, all the other sports, I don't know how much popular those shows would be 24/7. I don't even know if you could do a show 24 year round for those other teams. Could you?
No, it's like for example, I know like we're kind of running long here for this kind of show because it's kind of like a stale show because we talked about 3 things. But at the end of the day, you look at a team like the Phillies. It's like you're excited for the Phillies. It's like, for me personally, I'm not a Phillies fan, so I'm like, how are you excited for the Phillies? You lost in the NLCS while you're up 2-0. You come back home, you lose in 7, and you're excited for the Phillies. Like, to me, that's just depressing. I don't know. I mean, for the Eagles, I just want to get back to September. I want to see this team thrive and flourish because we have talent on this team. A team like the Phillies, you have the same exact talent coming back, and you expect them to do better with the same exact talent. Like, to me, that would just give me a headache personally, so I couldn't even talk about him.
Well, I think it's also Howie Roseman, because Howie Roseman is always wheeling and dealing in the offseason. We all know it's like clockwork. It's going to happen at this point, and that's exciting. We know we're never going to stay stagnant like these other teams, organizations. That's just not how Howie Roseman does it. He's very aggressive, and that's why Jeffrey Lurie likes him.
That's why I give Howie Roseman credit. like with my love-hate relationship with him, the way he stays aggressive at all times, always wants to make the team better, that's where I give him props. Because there's not many GMs in the city like there are Maury, who's a complete clown. There's not many GMs in the city that are like Howie Roseman in that aspect. The problem is with him finding talent. That's where I have the problem with him, because names that flash on paper or names that he thinks are needs aren't necessarily transitioning onto the field as consistently as I'd want them to. And I think that's the hate part of the relationship I have with him. What?
Absolutely. No, for sure. Now, I know we want to get into Jalen Hurts. Do you want to do that for the last 10 minutes, or should we save that for next week and really kick off the show with the state of Jalen Hurts and our opinions? Because Jalen Hurts is the franchise.
Let's end the show with it. Let's end the show with it.
All right. So, and it's kind of also our last topic here was, young quarterbacks getting less time than ever to make it in the NFL. We talked about that a little bit earlier with Kenny Pickett, Justin Fields. Obviously, that's not really the case with Jalen Hurts. He was drafted here in 2020. He sat for that year, and then he, when Carson Wentz was benched, he took over the last couple games. To me, I still have an overall positive view of Jalen Hurts. I totally agree with that comment right there. It's a massive year for Hurts because he was on, again, like what he posted, he wants to be like MJ. He was on that high, put the team on his back. That Buffalo Bills game, won it in overtime, quarterback draw to win it. And obviously 2022, the Super Bowl, amazing year. Unfortunately, which is kind of like, again, was swept under the rug last year, which I don't really know why, but this is just how the organization wanted it, was I think the injuries really affect his game, and that's the biggest downfall with him. It sucks. Like Kyle, like you mentioned, that's his game. He has to be able to be mobile and run the football, and he's obviously very effective. Now, was it used way too much, the tush push? The fact that he had, what did he have, like 16 rushing touchdowns? I think he broke the record or tied Cam Newton. That's a little obsessive. Like, why can't we just throw a fade to A.J. Brown instead of him getting his body smashed into the offensive line? Like, there's other ways around that. Now we have Saquon Barkley to hand the ball off to. But overall, this is about Jalen Hurts and his pure talent. I think he is good enough. The offense and Kellen Moore and Nick Sirianni, they just need to put him in better positions where he will not get hurt. Because I think it's when he gets hurt, that's when his mechanics, and he's just not as an effective, a good quarterback. And then his overall, this man, we were led to believe that he's an outstanding leader. That's all we've heard throughout college, throughout his Eagles career. Last year, we don't know what happened with A.J. Brown, and people are saying that he's, quiet and he leads by example. He's not like you can't really talk to him and have a conversation or whatever. So, like we said, it's going to be a massive year for him. I think he's still the future of this team. Again, people have up and down years. And that kind of goes back to my other question for you, Kyle. What is with society and NFL fans? It's like, all right, you had 5 bad games. See ya. Like, is that realistic, or is that going to change? What's your thoughts?
I mean, it'll never change because every fan base, what are there, 30, 32 NFL teams, 31, 30? I lost count. With every single fan base, you want to win. No one likes losing. At the end of the day, now us Eagles fans, we've been lucky recently. We've got to the playoffs. We've had some pretty down years, but for the most part, in the last 20 years, we've been in playoff contention, And I think with our fan base, it's a little bit more high up on the scale of pressure based because we know that these players can do it. It's just that if they have enough to do it, and with Jalen Hurts, he dropped off so high last year because what you just brought up makes sense. He rushed into the end zone for 16 times using the tush push, and that bangs up your body, and to answer your other question, why do they do it so much with him is because it's a guarantee. You could run it 3rd and 1, 4th and goal.
You're telling me AJ Brown's not a guarantee through a fade?
I mean, the tush push is more of a guarantee. Throwing it to AJ Brown, I would say, is maybe a 60% conversion percentage.
I would say 7.
Yeah, but the tush push was like 90 to 95% like guaranteed, and like you're going to use that every time. Now, granted, we have Saquon Barkley now, so if we're down at the goal line, 1st and goal, and we don't use Saquon Barkley, I'm sorry, the guy needs to be fired immediately.
Or do the tush push to Saquon, right? Fuck it.
Yeah, exactly. Right? Use the running back. Use the guy that's supposed to run the ball, not the guy that's supposed to pass the ball and run at times. Use the guy that's supposed to run the ball. It's like as a quarterback.
Will they do the tush push as much without Kelsey?
I mean, I guess they'll have to see and wait how it transpires with Cam Jurgens. Jason Kelsey ran it so successfully because he's one of the best centers in NFL history. But Cam Jurgens, that's also his natural position. So Jason Kelsey putting the word for him to draft him.
Handpicked by Kelsey.
Yeah. So him being in there and then using him maybe in the first couple weeks of preseason, hopefully get him to test the waters. Hopefully they don't have to go to it as much, but I wouldn't see how it wouldn't work with Cam Jurgens the way it worked with Jason Kelsey, because it's not that hard of a play to run, especially when you have Jason Kelsey.
Nobody else could do it.
But Jason Kelsey, Jalen Hurts squats 600 pounds. So it's like all you have to do is push him, and you're not going to stop him because it's just self-explanatory. It's just how fast can you snap the ball, how fast can you dive into the ground, and you pretty much have another successful tush push. But I don't know. I mean, they have Saquon Barkley now. There's no reason not to run him. So I hope we don't see
the original. That's the original question. Like your thoughts on Hurts overall and just his future and everything.
I'm not sold on him. I've never really have been sold on Hurts. Like in 2022, I thought he played fantastic. He threw the ball when he needed to. He never turned the ball over. He ran when he needed to. He got us to the Super Bowl. He damn near outplayed Patrick Mahomes besides that fumble. And then next year, he looked hurt on his first drive against the Patriots. Never really got back to form. He was successful with the tush push, and it was kind of the stats weren't correlating from what you saw in the eye test. He turned the ball over much more. And at the end of the year, he looked less of a leader. Like he went out against the Giants, pretty much broke his finger. I don't care what anybody says. He broke his finger. And he got nailed when he tried to do the tush push, and no one stood up for him. So I was looking at that in the Giants game, and I was like, do people really hate Jalen Hurts, or do they just not want to play anymore? So this year, I'm looking at it as, what could he do for the team to succeed as the player that we're paying him to be? And that is a $51 million quarterback a year. Can he overtake injuries? Can he overtake boundaries? Can he put the team on his back if possible? And quite frankly, I don't know. I'm not sure. I have to see more. But from this point forward, when we drafted him, I never really expected much. No, other than 2022, I would say I'm pretty dead on with it.
Who do you like more, Hurts or Sirianni?
Hurts.
Just overall, yeah.
Hurts. Yeah, I like Hurts more just because he's actually playing the game and he's putting himself out there on the line. Sirianni with the whole Garden speech and everything like that, it kind of came back to my head to how weird he is. So
I mean,
I don't know. Right now,
years ago, but
yeah, I mean, honestly, do I think they're the right tandem? It doesn't matter because the tandem right now is Kellen Moore and Jalen Hurts. So it's really how Kellen Moore coaches him. It's not Sirianni, because Sirianni's just there to look pretty or sad or whatever. I mean, he's
okay. Let's say, because it really is all intertwined. It's really, again, we talked about this last week. The Eagles are such it's not an individual franchise. It's like everything built in together. That's why it's kind of hard to pass the blame or who gets the credit, who doesn't get the credit. Even the 2022 people are like, oh, well, it's Shane Steichen. Is it Hurts? It's like, we don't even know who is responsible for success, failure, whatever. So let's say this new Kellen Moore offense, Vic Fangio, Sirianni as puppet head coach, whatever he's doing. Let's say this team, they come back to form. I'm going to say that they win the NFC East. Obviously, it's not an official prediction, just spitballing here. let's just say they finish 11-6 again, 10-7. They win the wild card game, lose the divisional game. What will be the fate of Sirianni? Basically, my point is, if Hurts and everyone has a great season, can you see Kellen Moore being elevated to the head coach?
It depends on how we look finishing the season. If we go into that divisional game and it's a tough game and we're playing someone like the 49ers and we just lose a close game, Sirianni's not going to get fired. It's no one's going to get elevated. But if we win that wild card game and we look absolutely soulless or lifeless in the divisional round game, I feel like multiple people are going to get fired. And that's where you have to look at. I know it's completely off topic, but that's where you have to look at Kenny Pickett coming in as a backup, because Howie Roseman is in love with the guy. Like, he really is. He gave up a third rounder for him. So there's a lot of things we're gonna look at this year, man, and it's gonna be a fun ride. I just hope they don't piss me off too much. I think it's a good reason. That's a good reason why we're doing the show on Wednesdays, because how fired up I get, and I let myself calm down a little bit. Now, granted, after the games, I don't know if you and me are going to try to do like 15 to 20-minute post games on our phones or whatever, but I know I'm going to try to do something because I want like a reaction. But one thing I won't do is, if I drink too much, I will not do post games, because that's something I'm completely cutting out.
No.
No.
It's good. You don't want to get yourself in trouble or get yourself hurt or anything.
No, I never. Yeah, I think I've learned my lesson in my 31 years. So,
last thing I'll say is, again, I'm really excited for the season. I think it's going to be a great year. It's just like, I'm sure they weighed a lot of options bringing Sirianni back. You know what I mean? And it's like they had the faith that this can be turned around. And it's like, it's really 50-50. It might even be, I kind of on the fence where it's like, is this going to work? Because should a team ever get that low when you have your head coach and your quarterback tandem, intact, should they get to that point where they were last year? Is there any coming back from that? Like Ben Roethlisberger, Mike Tomlin, Belichick, Brady, like these, like, would that ever happen to those tandems? That's my biggest fear, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, last year, you're not going to see anything worse than last year. I don't think Brady had a year like that ever. The last year that he had with Bill Belichick was probably the worst year of all time. And they lost to Tennessee at home in the wild card game. That was his last year there. He won the Super Bowl the next year. So I've never seen anything like that, not only in Jalen Hurts' time here as a Philadelphia Eagle, but I don't think I've seen a collapse like that ever as an Eagles fan.
No, besides Chip Kelly, who cares about that?
Yeah, I mean, not even, though, because Chip Kelly even beat the Patriots that year. So, I mean...
No, it was the year before. It was the year before.
Yeah, yep. And
after they beat Dallas on Thanksgiving, and it was, like, amazing. And
then they lost Dallas at home to pretty much lose the division. I remember that.
Yeah, Seattle, and then the Washington Saturday game.
Awful. Yeah.
But
it's pretty bad. And then getting boat raced by the Cardinals on a Sunday Night Football.
Yeah, that was the next year. Yeah, that was awful. But
that was awful.
Like we said, I'm excited for this. It's going to be a really interesting season. It's definitely going to be. It's probably going to be the most talked about interesting Sirianni Hurts season yet, because it's totally unpredictable for sure. A lot of changes, a lot of new free agents, 2 new coordinators again. Will this be 2017 where you bring in all these pieces and everybody syncs up, or will this be Dream Team 2011? Like, it can go it can be that drastic, and I think it's going to be,
Yeah. I mean, only time will tell. I don't want to relive the Dream Team. That was awful. That was terrible.
I want to relive 2017, right?
See, but that's the thing. Like, I remember me, you, and Rob going down to FedEx, and we knew that our team was good, but we didn't know it was that good.
And game, it was like magical. That game, it really was just fun, right?
Yeah, it was. Fletcher Cox recovering the fumble, going into the end zone. I remember everything. I mean, that season was amazing. But this next year, you kind of still have expectations to get at least to the playoffs. And usually when a team has high expectations with a lot of talent.
That's always our expectations as Eagles fans now.
Yeah, but in 2017, it wasn't. Like, we wanted to get to the divisional round.
No, I'm saying no. I'm saying get to the playoffs. It's always our expectation to get to the playoffs. Yeah.
Correct. But yeah, next year I'm honestly still on the Super Bowl train. Like, I really am. Like, I remember being there at Xfinity when we lost to the Kansas City Chiefs, and that still kind of puts a bad taste in my mouth because of how we lost that game. You know, and until we get back there and beat the Chiefs, I want the Chiefs. Until we get back there and beat the Chiefs, I'm not going to be happy.
I don't want them to make it again, but if they do, they better lose. Seriously. Like, I mean, you're about to have Andy Reid be the best coach ever with another win. Seriously.
Looks like it. Yep. But all right, guys, we're gonna get out of here. It was a little bit of a shorter show today. A little shorter show today. A little bit of an hour. We usually go for like an hour and a half, but obviously we're in the off season, and you know, I thought it was a great show. I really do, and happy to have my co-host here every single week at 2:30ish, 2:45, whatever time works better for us. And it's gonna be a great ride, and I can't wait for next week.
Absolutely, Kyle. Always a pleasure. And I will talk to you guys next week. Have a great week, everybody.
All right. See you guys.